Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Pastor SIZWE MWALE from Alpha. We're here today to discuss on the subject of discipleship. And with me in the studio, with me out here today, we have Dr. David Becker. And I'll let him just introduce themselves. We've got David Becker and we've got Gibson. And I'll just allow them to introduce themselves for now.
Well, Dr. David Becker. I've been in Zambia for 25 years and looking forward to our little time together today.
Fantastic. And Gibson?
All right, I'm Gibson Chitunda from Global Heart Church, and I've been in Zambia for about 3 years now. So
you've been in Zambia for 3 years?
Yeah, for 3 years. I'm a Zambian, but I grew up outside, and then I just shifted back here quite recently. Yeah.
Wonderful. Where were you studying, or where were you before you came back?
I did my junior in high school in Botswana, and then I did my tertiary education in South Africa.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great.
Wow, so this is even better because then we've got a bit of mixed experience, right? Now we've got an American experience. Well, though
30
David,
years in Africa, though.
Yeah, 30 years in Africa, so he's probably been in Africa longer than most young people.
Longer than I have.
Longer than you have. There you go. Been on the planet, right? Fantastic. So maybe to just kick the ball rolling, David, what is discipleship from your perspective?
What is discipleship? First of all, discipleship is sometimes tied together with being a Christian, but you know, we got to face the facts. Not all Christians are disciples.
That's right.
What does it mean? Disciple is a committed follower of Christ. Well,
Right.
Christian means being a follower of Christ. But discipleship is a little bit more. It's the disciple has chosen to give their entire life to Christ.
Well, David, you're going to have to come back and unpack that a bit more, because you made some interesting statements, such as a disciple is not necessarily a Christian. You know, a disciple is a Christian, but a Christian is not necessarily a disciple, right? So that's going to be interesting when we throw that around. Gibson, what do you think discipleship is from your perspective?
From my perspective, discipleship is more of it's a deeper, more intimate walk.
Right.
So, like he's saying, not every Christian is a disciple. Not everybody who goes to church can be discipled. Discipleship also has, it can either be between two men or two ladies, and it can be maybe directly from God.
Okay.
Like we had the 12 disciples.
Wait a minute. So are you saying that a woman can disciple a young man, or a man can disciple a woman?
I'd advise against it, because discipleship has got there's some
It's
intimate
intimate.
levels that being developed in there. Yeah. So it's sometimes you find it's maybe one person chooses someone else and sees potential in them and disciples them. So in those cases, it has to be a relationship that builds, some trust that develops. You need to open up to your mentor and to your junior. So it's always preferable that you choose, as a young man, to choose someone senior to you, and
Preferably male or female.
Yeah.
Because you said, you're making it sound like discipleship is a very intimate thing, right? Maybe I want to jump to the question of what kind of models of discipleship are there? Because I mean, if I go to church on a Sunday morning, can you call that discipleship? David, what do you think?
If we are biblical Christians, which we should be, we need to go back to the beginnings. And Christ modeled for us discipleship.
Right.
And in his 3.5 years of ministry, what did he do? Did he hold classes where he stood and lecture? Did he build a university? Did he start a seminary program? I mean, let's face facts. He didn't even leave us he could have left us a good systematic theology, but he didn't do it. What did he do? He walked with 12 men. He slept with them. He ate with them. He talked with them.
Right.
He took 2 or 3 off to the side and talked with them.
Right.
He traveled along the roads of their day with these men. They saw his life. He was in relationship with them.
Right.
You know, discipleship in the church is about relationship. And it's not just about handing out a book filled with the information of Christianity.
Right.
It's the effect of Christianity on our lives that we model with one another. And can a baby model it to another baby? No. This is why we need elders in the church.
Oh well, you're okay. I'm gonna get back to you on that, David. You're steering the pot way too much here. But I'm enjoying this discussion. I hope you guys are enjoying this discussion as much as I am. But Gibson, from your end, what are some of the models of discipleship that you would point out?
I'd like to point out maybe the deepness in which discipleship goes.
Okay.
Because if, for example, I'm with you and I'm your disciple, there is a certain amount of training and knowledge that you can impart to me.
Right.
But then there'll be a point where even you yourself will say, okay, I have given all that I can to Gibson, and there is still further growth that he can do.
Right.
So you would take him to maybe you will, or maybe God will lead me to someone else who can continue building from that point. So I'd say discipleship comes with different layers and levels.
Right.
So sometimes maybe you would find one disciple, or what do you call someone who disciples you? A
Disciple or mentor?
A discipler, okay.
A discipler.
Who will be the complete package, and then he can take you from being a baby Christian and take you to a deepness and maturity with Christ. And other times there'll be different people who take you through different steps in that process.
Right. So when I'm talking about models, guys, I think what I'm trying to find out is, so we see Jesus, right? Sometimes he's talking to 72. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes he's talking to thousands, right? So that large group setting, which we would call church, right?
Okay.
You know, if we were to paraphrase, church would look like something like that. You know, some churches have got 50, 70, others have got 1,000 people. Would you call that a discipleship place, a place of discipleship? Because from what I'm hearing from you guys is that discipleship has to be smaller, more intimate kind of a walk with.
I don't think you can ever disciple large groups. You know, Jesus spoke and he taught. He gave instruction to the larger groups.
Right.
But discipling took place in the relationship that he had with the 12.
Right.
You know, I'll pull out a couple of scriptures on that fact. Discipleship, Jesus required a total life commitment. He said, and we have it recorded in Luke 14, so you cannot become my disciple without giving up everything you own.
Wow.
Talking to that rich ruler. He had to give up what he owned to put his focus on Jesus. There are good sermons in that. And then Jesus said to his disciples, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must turn from your selfish ways and take up your cross and follow me.
Right.
Turn away and follow me. At that point, we read in John 6:66, it says, at that point, many of his disciples turned away and deserted him.
Wow. Wow.
You know, the requirements of total commitment and following are hard.
Right.
And not the large group, the 5,000. 5,000 went home that night after they.
Yeah. Only the 12.
They didn't stay.
Only the 12 remained.
Right? And so discipleship takes place in the intimacy of life.
Right.
And is it just instruction? Do we just teach the faith, or do we teach who we are?
Well, that's I'm going to hold you on that, David. Before we get to that,
You've got a list of things here.
Gibson, I want your response to that, because I mean, you're involved with Global Heart Church, where you're one of the youth leaders there. You're also, I know, you've led Alpha at UNZA and connection groups and all of those kind of things. Because you're doing a whole lot of different things, right? On Sunday and all of that. How would you describe what we do as a church, and what are some of those things that are discipleship, and what are some of those things that aren't discipleship?
Okay, I would say discipleship it's more than just teaching and imparting knowledge. It's like you're saying, it's the lifestyle that you give to them. So the people who you're discipling have to come and almost live with you. They need to see your lifestyle. Your life has to be a book to them, and that's what they're reading from. So discipleship is maybe if you're in a church group and you've got someone who you're discipling, you take them around, let them see how you interact with other people, let them see how you interact with God, let them just model that into their life.
Right.
So yeah, I think that would be my understanding.
So in a sense, you would say to students or those on campus, right? Because they also have, you know, a large meeting where, you know, where they have a, you know, Bible study and all of that. But at the same time, you would be basically saying to them that they still need to have perhaps smaller groupings with people that are mature. I mean, what would your advice be on how can we disciple students on campuses?
Yeah, discipling people, it's all about smaller groups. Maybe
Right.
Jesus is a good example. He had 12. He had the ability to do that. But some of us, 12 might be a bit of a stretch. So start with a small group, 1, 2, maybe 3, and even that would be good for yourself. You will not be stretched too far and not be burnt out. So a small group of people so that you can focus on them and show them everything that you have and just help them grow.
Fantastic.
So yeah.
But you know, when we talk about discipleship on campus, are we talking on? We're talking about young men and women
Yes.
who are in a period of time when they're strongly focused on learning information for a career,
Right.
and that career is not a minister in the church.
Right.
So when we talk about discipleship at a college campus type setting, do we focus just on discipleship of Christian curriculum, or what do we do? One of the things I would like for us to be able to see in our campus ministries is to be able to locate men and women of faith who are operating in fields of enterprise and business in our nation, and who can come and share with our students the Christian faith as it works out in a bank, in being a manager of a business, in being a simple employee, a laborer, a mechanic. What does it mean to be a Christian in these vocations in which they're studying for? And you know, to expand discipleship.
Yeah, because discipleship, it's more than just when you give your life to Christ as a disciple.
Right.
It's more than just being consecrated for ministry work, because now you need to be, for example, when Jesus was on earth, he was called a friend of sinners because he brought the kingdom into the world.
Right.
He didn't now just go and be focused on like ministry work and did that.
Yeah.
That's why even the disciples that he was choosing were like tax collectors and fishermen. He wanted people who have got their own vocation, you know.
Right.
So that those are the same people. When he said in the end, he said, "Go ye and make disciples." They will use their vocation on top of more than just their ministry, as part of their ministry, to go and make those disciples.
So you're talking about a holistic discipling someone.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna get back, guys. Just hold your horses a little bit. I want to stir the pot a little bit here, okay? What I want to ask is, we're saying that discipleship is in smaller grouping, and yet what we see as a church and what we model everywhere else, it seems to me like the church makes the big church Sunday meeting the main thing, and then everything else is secondary.
Yeah.
So I mean, David, how would you respond to that? Because if we're saying that discipleship is in smaller groups, or what we're modeling is that the big gathering is more important, what are we saying?
Well, we were saying that we've accepted the lie of the devil, we believe it, and we're going to practice it. What lie am I talking about? The one that began centuries ago that said clergy, laity. There's a level of clergy who are the ministers and caretakers of the things of the institutional Christian church. Everyone else is laity. And do we know what laity means? The actual word means untrained, unprepared, unequipped.
Right.
So why do we want Christians, the churches, to be filled with thousands of untrained, unequipped people? Unequipped for what? Their faith. We have to realize the church, the offices of not the offices, but the gifts of leadership, the fivefold ministries we read,
the functions,
were given as a function to the church to equip people for ministry, to equip people to be disciplers.
Right.
The Great Commission was about being sent out to be disciplers who will disciple disciplers. You know, we look at the great explosion right after the birth of the church, but today, with 1/3 of the population of the world Christian, where do we see the advancing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Maybe Gibson, you may want to respond to that question that I posed earlier to say, if we're saying that discipleship is in the smaller groups, why is it that we seem as the church to emphasize more on the bigger group than on the smaller group? I know we say, well, and you're going to join a connect and you're going to join this, but the thing is we put more resources and focus, right, on the big thing. So are we sending a mixed message? What's going on there? Or maybe what's the idea behind that?
I think maybe it's just people got slightly their priorities warped. So they focus on the numbers and the bigness of their church. So that is to them maybe a sign of success.
Right.
Which in essence we should break things down.
Right.
Make things smaller. So like our Pastor Liam always encourages that we grow bigger as a church, let's also grow smaller so that people's lives can be changed on a more intimate level.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think that's on those levels is where discipleship starts and grows.
Fantastic. I want to switch gears a little bit here, guys. So I want to get back into what you're talking about, David, in terms of is discipleship just dissemination of information? Okay. You know, I mean, what really is discipleship? How do we then measure that a person has become a disciple?
Well, you've asked a lot of questions on that one. But the first one is discipleship a dissemination of information? We've made it that way. We've got our 10 books programs and books with 7 steps here and 7 steps there, and 7 is a special Christian number. And so we've got these programs to give information, memorize the books of the Bible, memorize and learn certain theological positions and certain treatises and things. But how do we live? I mean, folks, we've got to understand that we've got good, orthodox thinking Christians out there who live a life guided more by the world than by their orthodox thoughts. By orthodox, I mean, good, sound Christian knowledge. Discipleship is about life. And how do we do that? Not by just handing out DVDs filled with instruction. Life, when they leave campus, I've left 3 campuses, bachelor program, master's program, and doctoral program. Each time you leave this campus, you get back into the world. And life, real life. Knowledge doesn't always help you. It's what you know and how to use it. And our Christian faith, this is why I want so much of our discipleship programs on the campus today, help people understand how to take their faith and make it part of their real life.
Fantastic. How would you respond to that, Gibson, in terms of, is discipleship just dissemination of information? What are we talking about when we're trying to say, how do we therefore disciple someone? What are we using? Is it just information, one-way street, or how would you look at that?
I'll say it's more than just information, because it has to be an entire experience.
Right.
So even when, for example, when Jesus was doing his teaching, there was one point where he said, I've given you power, go out. I think he called them, there were about 70 of them in Luke 10. 72. And then he said, go, heal the sick, cast out demons. And then they eventually came back and said, it was great, and that's when he was talking about rejoice that now more that your name is written in the Lamb's Book. It's what he was doing was more than just giving them knowledge. He was giving them that experience as well, so that in the end, when he sent them out, they started off a bit shaky until the Spirit came, but in the end they had that confidence. They said, we've seen Jesus do it, now we can do it.
Fantastic.
And that's a point where you were touching on a little earlier. Discipleship is a lifelong process, but do we always need a discipler? Do we always need someone to be teaching us? Jesus recognized...
Well, you're steering the pot real hard there, David. Go ahead.
Jesus took his followers, taught them, but then he trusted them. He didn't walk with all of those 70s. He didn't call them back for a test. He trusted them to go out and, according to who they were, minister according to what he had taught them. And there's got to be an element of trust, not only that we will handle the faith properly, but that we will also grow up. And Paul was with Timothy, but after a while he sent Timothy off on his own. still wrote to him, still talked to him, but he let him
Yeah.
let him grow. And discipleship, we raise them up, but we let them go.
Wow, we're still going on this subject. We still have so much meat to tackle on this. I just want to point out something. You know, when you look at Christ being a rabbi in the very first century, right? A rabbi in those days, even to this day, is someone who has a school of thought.
Yeah.
You know, So there was even in the old days we saw the schools of the prophets, right? So they had different schools of thought. So Jesus, therefore, would have been, you would say that he was a rabbi with his own school of thought, and this school of thought has now been called Christianity. Have we lost a little bit of the fact that Christ or Christianity is a school of thought or a philosophy, David, or are we just now looking at it from more of, more than just a bunch of rules or whatever, or information? How would you look at that, David?
I'm just going to bounce it off of Hebrews. Real simple. By now you should be teachers. But instead you still need the milk. It's not the schools, it's not the programs, it's not the teachers we follow. It's whether or not we are becoming mature. In Paul, when he wrote to 1 Corinthians, he was very concerned about the divisions there. He said, some of you are saying, I'm of Apollos, I'm of Peter, I'm of Paul. And then some, I only follow Christ. But they were struggling. And these divisions come when we don't focus on, there's one head of the body, Christ. And we're all filled with the same Spirit. We're all under the same Lordship. We all have the same Father. We're all in the same body. And for one part of the body say, I'm more important, or I've got a little better education than the other. Chapter 12 of Corinthians says, it doesn't work that way.
Gibson, what do you think? Is Christianity, perhaps, is it a worldview? Is it more than just a set of instructions or a club that one joins? Because nowadays, I mean, you can be a Christian, you can call yourself a disciple if you go to church and you attend and do all sorts of churchy things. What do you think Christianity and the whole process of discipleship?
Christianity should be stripped away from the notion of being a religion and more of a relationship.
Right.
Because you can't be a Christian without having a personal relationship with Jesus. That's the foundation of Christianity. So I think in that sense, discipleship is all about maybe one person who is the mentor, teaching and training somebody to have a relationship with Jesus and have it in a more deep and more intimate manner. Yeah. So I think.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
David, you want to respond to that?
When Jesus spent three and a half years in ministry?
Yep.
What did he teach? What did he talk about? He didn't talk about salvation. He didn't talk about the rules of the church.
He did, but he hardly spoke. He hardly emphasized it.
His first words of why I came to proclaim the kingdom.
Right.
And all of his parables, everything in his life, his instruction as a mentor to those who followed him, his disciples, was about living in the kingdom of God. How do we live as kingdom people?
That's right.
All life, every human being alive on this planet today, breathing, has a worldview, has a fundamental core set of beliefs that they got from the time they were born that governs how they live, how they think, and how they behave. And Jesus knew this, and that's why when he made that pronouncement to Nicodemus, he made a most radical statement that I think it was ever made in his ministry, and we undervalue it today. You must be born again.
Wow. Well, some
Nicodemus couldn't understand that.
I just need to receive the Holy Spirit, and that's being born again.
Or, well, we call, starting over, turning around. But Nicodemus couldn't understand that.
Yeah.
Jesus said, you have a life, but you must be born again to see the kingdom of God.
Wow.
And so if we're born again, we now must have to start over learning a new worldview,
Right.
a new way of life, a new guidance center, a new ultimate allegiance in our core, by which we even study why go to school. Our worldview tells us why to go to school. And so our worldview being changed into a biblical worldview helps us to live as kingdom people.
Right.
Discipleship is about changing our core. What is our ultimate allegiance? What do we value first in life? God or self? And the two can't combine. And that's why the scripture is so clear. Don't be double-minded. Don't be lukewarm. Don't mix cold and warm. Cold and hot. We've got to choose. Put off the old man, put on the new. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Not your spirit, not your soul, but of your mind.
David, that is revolutionary on itself. Because if you're saying you came from talking about being born again, not just this quote-unquote spiritual experience, but really changing everything, our value system.
Everything.
That's transformational. That's massive. I don't know if we actually grasp the importance of that. But I want to just switch gears a little bit there. And Gibson, maybe point at you. I mean, you've had different experiences of discipling young people within the church context, outside the church, in campuses, and all of this. If we're talking to young people in this current generation, what are some of the ways? What are some of the perhaps even media, perhaps even platforms that we can use? Don't forget again to build relationship and disciple, like you said.
Okay, social media plays a huge role in terms of connecting to people. We've seen it firsthand during this lockdown, where people were almost forced to stay home. So we as a church had to find different ways of now connecting with the young people so that they can stay rooted in some sort of in the word. They've got that continuous flow of information, of discipleship. So we turned to platforms that allowed us to maybe video call, just to continue communicating, WhatsApp messages, and
is that Zoom? What else do you have? You guys use Zoom. What else do you guys use?
So I guess you can use this stuff like Zoom, Hangout. WhatsApp also has video call capabilities. Skype kind of fell off the ball. They had a head start in video communication, but
just didn't keep,
so unfortunately for Skype, I'm guessing there are a lot more Hangout as well. But we've seen much Zoom's capabilities of the capacity I would say is our preferred use.
Can I play the devil's advocate and say that if we're really saying that it's relational, I mean, we're living in a social media world where we're looking at people who have 5,000 friends and yet have no friend. And so if we're saying that we're now turning to social media to help us disciple, how do I know that the guy isn't there actually naked, half naked?
Like some of them get caught on TV.
Exactly. I mean, they've caught people on TV who are half naked, you know what I mean, and putting on a suit on top, you know what I mean? So how do we know that people are being authentic if we're going to use things like social media to actually disciple people? I know I'm being the devil's advocate here.
Can I say something on that too with you? I got to watch my grandchild graduate from kindergarten class with Zoom.
Oh wow!
Here in Lusaka to Phoenix, Arizona, live. Social media has expanded beyond anything I think we could really imagine, and where it's going, I don't think we still know. It's a tremendous tool. It's not the method. We still have to have the relationship, and a lot of times, you've had church interaction between people. COVID's not going to last forever.
No.
We're going to be able to get back face to face again, but the tool, I've traveled to every corner of Zambia, but I'm hoping to be able to do some videos that can go by Zoom. We can have Zoom classes with Kasama or Mongu or someplace, at a distance live.
Yeah.
But we've already met.
Yeah.
We've already established trust. You know, it's a great tool, but I don't know about using it completely as
on its own, exclusively.
This is exclusive.
What do you think?
I think like what you're saying, it's about trust.
Yeah.
So once you've already established that relationship and there's trust, so you can already know when you're communicating with them over the social media platforms that, okay, this is my disciple, should I say, and I can trust him. I can trust him if I need to send him to do some other assignments, maybe go and helping somebody else with an issue they're dealing with. I can trust them because they are almost an extension of me, shall I say. Yeah. Right. So it's all based on that platform of trust, I should say.
Well, guys,
and I think with this tool, man, it's ripe for development.
Yeah.
I think
so much potential.
In Zambia, if we've got the fiber optics spanning across the nation today with the ZISCO lines, like they say, and some corners are now getting good high-speed internet. Does everyone have it? No. But if they can locate centers in these distant areas, churches that can have internet connection, buildings, students, we can have Zoom classes.
Right. Yeah.
Well, right now we have to.
I know, but I mean, nationwide, it can make a difference.
Absolutely.
Instead of building a huge university campus, we can, begin to establish it and go out and visit and talk and share things as we're allowed. But tremendous opportunities.
So in short, what we're saying is social media is a tool that we can use, right, to disciple young people, but we can't use it exclusively. We still need to have a relationship. We need to face each other 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, in smaller groups. Get to do life on life and build relationship. As we're coming towards the end of our discussion, guys, could you what words would you have for young people? We'll have this round, then we'll have the last round of question. But what words would you have for young people out there in terms of maybe he wants to be discipled? What can I do if I want to become a disciple?
Okay. I think the best thing to do is maybe within your church, you could either maybe find an elder or a leader in your church, or maybe go to your pastor, speak to your pastor and say, I would like to have someone to disciple me, and then he would point out someone who will be best suited for you. Right. What the youth can also do is not to look at the disciple as their main focal point. Right. Paul himself said, follow me as I follow Christ. Right. So in essence, the mentor is just pointing you to Christ. Don't look at the person who's discipling you and say their word is law and I'll follow them blindly. They are just leading you to Christ. Right. So in the end, they are just giving you that experience and that training, and you should focus on now building that relationship with Christ by your own self. Yeah.
Fantastic. David, what would you say, I'm going to flip that question to someone that's older and is saying, look, I don't have a ministry, I'm a laity, but here's a person that's discipled, that's mature. What would you say to them in terms of reaching out to young people and discipling?
The scriptures are real clear that older people, older men and women in the church are supposed to be helping the younger people. Right. Let the older women instruct the younger women. Let the older men instruct the older men. We had traditions here in Zambia, the old Nsaka. We still use them in rural areas, but how many areas in town, in the urban areas, do we have Nsaka? Now, is it purpose-built or what? But we can have centers where we can sit and talk and share my life experiences. Does an older person have to be way advanced? Sometimes the years help by providing good experience, although I do know the fact that sometimes a young fool just grows up to be an old fool. But it's, we have experiences that we can share. And if we don't feel adequate enough as an older person, there's an answer. Get adequate. We can be looking for answers ourselves. Why? So that we can help the younger people. The shukuru in our society was to help his grandchildren. We need shukurus in the church today. We need older men and women who can give advice and teach our younger people how to grow up from a little age. You don't have to be super intelligent to teach a small child. You have to be willing.
Right. Fantastic. Just coming to the end of this discussion, Gibson, and guys, I just want you to reflect on this. We're having issues in this nation, right? And yet we're a Christian nation, right? We probably have over 60-70%. They say, well, it's higher than that. Yeah, 80% is Christian, so to speak. And yet,
identified.
Yeah, identified as Christians. And yet here we are as a nation of Christians, and we have corruption, some of the highest corruption, and the issues that are happening on social media in terms of immorality with young people and all of those kind of things. Is it possible to disciple this nation? And how do we start that revolution of discipleship? I don't know who wants to jump in first. Gibson.
The big question. So I guess it's starting at a tender age, We were having a discussion previously where David was saying discipleship starts at a young age. So as parents, don't wait for your children to be teenagers or all grown up before you start discipling them. It starts at a tender age. Get those morals and those values instilled at a young age, and then, like the Bible says, when they grow up, they will not depart from them.
Right.
So that's what we as a nation should start. We start with them at a tender age and let them grow up in that admonition of God.
David, is there hope for the Shikulus and the Madalas who are already old and not discipled?
If I didn't have a hope, I'd try to find some piece of land out in along the valley or someplace to go and hole up in until Christ comes again, or I pass away. SIZWE and guys, I hear repeatedly people calling for revival in our land.
Yes.
What are we wanting to revive? I think it's time we have a revolution. A revolution in which we overthrow lots of old religious thinking, a lot of old things that are binding us and hindering us and keeping us from moving on. What we need is to start thinking differently. It's going to take a generation. It won't happen overnight. Older folks are hard to change, and young people have got plans and visions that they get running with, and sometimes run to the wrong end of the goal. But we need to begin seeing that the gifts that were given to the church to equip the church for maturity. We are not maturing. Why? We are to mature into the full stature, not a partial, not a little. We're called to be like Christ. How can we be that way when our ultimate allegiance is divided? How can we be like Christ when the core value system, our worldview, is partially traditional and partially Christian? We can't. Put off the old man, put on the new. Pursue the things of God and allow Him to make us all into examples to the world of who Jesus is, for we are His body. If the world wants to see Christ today, where do they look?
His body. Wow, we are His body. Gibson, just tell us a little bit in closing about some of the tools that you guys have used in terms of discipling young people.
One of the most effective ones that we've seen is the Alpha courses, the Alpha sessions, because it has a lot of questions that they can ask on different levels, Some of them would start off with humor in them, ask who's your favorite superhero and such, and then they'll get more deeper and more self-reflective, so that you can see, okay, as a person, what am I doing here? You start trying to figure out who you are, So I'd say the Alpha is one very effective course to use.
Fantastic.
And what's important on that, and I just going to put a plug. I became a Christian in 1970, and I've had a lot of questions of God during these years. God's never been afraid of our questions. And the best discipleship is questions. How do we do this? What's that mean? All the questions. Instead, we want to dictate, this is what you should believe. No, let the questions fly.
Yeah.
Let the questions come.
Well, we could go on forever. This is a discussion that cannot be exhausted in 30 or 40 minutes.
No.
But you know, in truth, I hope you've learned something whilst listening to us, and helped you to rethink some of your old paradigms. And so, yeah, we just want you to continue to enjoy this conference, and hopefully we'll have more of these discussions to come. So thanks for joining us. This has been Pastor S and David and Gibson discussing on discipleship.